Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fix Your BS, where BS stands for belief systems. And we talk about five major pillars: relationships, business, health, faith or belief, and finances or money. And I try to bring people on that I see on the internet or social media that exude one or more of those pillars that are just crushing it so they can give you the strategies and the tactics in order for you to learn how to build your greatest life, your dream life on your terms. And I came across this guy on Instagram and was like, dude, I love what this guy's doing. His name is Hector Bravo. And if you go to Instagram, it's Hector_Bravo. He's also on LinkedIn, but this guy's a combat veteran, international best-selling author. He's got a YouTube channel called That Prison Guard with over 2 million views. And I was so impressed with his Instagram and some of the videos he had on there. As you know, I'm very pro-gun, very pro-veteran, and I love having veterans on here. So thank you, Hector, for being here and for serving our country.
Thank you, man. Thank you for those kind words, and thank you for having me on.
So as you know, man, our goal is to talk about the different pillars that I just mentioned. You know, if you had to rank those pillars and say which one was your best and which one was your worst, what do you think those two would be?
Could you go over them again?
Yeah. Relationships, business, health, belief, and money.
Belief strongest, relationship weakest.
Okay, so why is belief or faith, belief, those two things are kind of interchangeable a little bit. Why would you say that's your strongest?
Beliefs, because I have had my ups and downs, my ins and outs, my all arounds. You know, I grew up in a religious household, fell out of faith during my deployment in Iraq due to all the experiences I was encountering, and then hit a real rock bottom. And you know, it took what it took for me to fall back into good graces with my higher power.
You know, it's interesting when we talk about faith a lot. When I say faith, people immediately jump over to religion. Right. Or if I say belief, they talk about religion. And I tell people all the time that to me, religion is a man-made construct and faith and belief is more of the universe construct.
Yeah, I'm totally tracking. My faith and my belief is based on an honor system, a code system, just like how you said, whatever you put out into the world, I know comes back to you. And I know this because I used to participate in negativity, and I would end up in jail, heartbroken in relationships, woe is me mentality, as opposed to how I'm on the right track now, pushing out positivity. I'm getting a lot of that back. So yeah, laws of the universe as well.
So how did you go from that? How did you go from that victim mentality, negative mentality, hanging out with negative people, to transition over into the positive side? Not just, I'm being a positive thinker, but a positive person.
They say you only got to change one thing, and that's everything. People, places, and things. I had to relocate away from my former area, my former life, my former friends that I used to, partake in drinking, drug usage, and all of the above. Remove myself from that situation. Identify trigger points, right? Because all this was a learning experience for me. I came in very, very green, very blind, very young. I got sober at the age of 26. I'm 39 now. And that played a massive role. So identifying triggers, coming up with game plans, how to maneuver, navigate those triggers. So yeah, it was definitely a process. This was not overnight. This was what it looked like. And I tell people, it looks like 1 step forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It looks like a lot of that.
So a lot of people, especially in today's society, when I talk about and teach on these 5 pillars in various different, scenarios, most people think it takes less time, or they want it to take less time to change anything in those pillars, their relationship or their business or their money or belief or their health. They think, it should happen now. So how does somebody come to terms with that and just understand that it's going to take a little bit of time?
So not only do people, including myself in the beginning, wanted things now, not only does it take time, it takes work. quality over quantity, you know, and I myself am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is where I learned that. You know, you hear people in the rooms talk about, I have 20 years of sobriety, 15 years of sobriety, 30. Me with 1 week in, I'm like, well, I want 20 years now, instantly, now, right? But there's a saying in those rooms, it's one day at a time. And let me tell you, it didn't sit well with me. It didn't sit well with me at all. I fought it, right? Until I learned the word moderation. I learned, you know, people telling me, hey, Hector, you're right on time. You're right where you need to be, you know, and that includes every promotion that I didn't get at work. That includes everything that I tried out for and didn't get. There's a reason, right? Because had I gotten those, I would be in a different path than I am right now.
So you took responsibility for those things and said, you know what, there's a reason for this, and I'm cool with that. I'm okay with that. You had faith and belief in that process, which is why you're saying that's not your number one now.
But like, you better believe I went through it. You better believe that when I first didn't get the promotions, I was character assassinating the people that did get the promotions. I was very resentful. So yeah, I did. What I also say is every mistake in life I've learned the hard way. Right, so I did everything wrong the first time around, and second, and third, and fourth.
You know, you keep repeating the same problems or the same issues if you don't learn the lesson from them and start to take different actions, right?
Well, that's the definition of insanity.
That's right. Yeah, expecting something different and taking the same actions.
Correct.
One of my favorite books is by Ed Milet. It's The Power of One More. Have you ever heard that book?
Yes.
And he talks about his dad going through sobriety and dealing with those demons and realizing that, you know, I can't promise 20 years, but I can promise one more day.
Correct.
Power of one more day. And that's basically what we were talking about. So what about somebody that messes up? They have a goal, they're moving in that direction, whatever it is, if it's sobriety or if it's building a relationship or if it's financial or business, and they mess up. How do they get back on the right track without having that character, you know, where they're beating themselves up so bad?
You know, damn, there's no doubt that all my life experiences have led up to this point. You know what I mean? So I was also part of the crisis response team in the prison, which is equivalent to a SWAT team. So I was in that academy, and things weren't always going right. You know, you're learning, you're moving at a fast pace. There's a lot of alpha males around. And fortunate enough to have a good, solid instructor. And me and another person got into some words, and he goes, hey, man, empty out the cup, right? Empty out the cup. Also, during shooting, you mentioned you were pro-gun, which is awesome because you can relate to this. The shooting qualification course is extremely, extremely difficult for that team. And so much so that if you miss a round, you absolutely cannot focus on that missed round, because trust me, your mind will make you miss every other shot after that. And that's something that I had to learn, you know, the hard way. It's just, you see the round not go, but you just worry about the next one.
That relates so much to life, because, you know, we're humans and we take action and we think it's going to go a certain way. You know, when you go to fire that gun at a target, you expect it's going to hit that target. And if it misses that target, you can either focus on that while you're trying to shoot at the next target, or you can move on mentally and say, I'm going to move on to the next. Now, how does someone get into the habit? Is that something you've been able to do, is get into the habit of focusing on the next thing that you're doing or the next goal that you're trying to hit?
Repetition. And also, I have learned to love failure. As crazy as that sounds, man, I used to be devastated by failure, devastated, shameful. But I always now know, okay, this happened because it's either there's a lesson to be learned. What is it? And how can I improve, modify, and try something better next time?
Let's talk about failure for a second, man. I'm glad you brought that up, because so many people get caught up in what they would consider their own failures. What is failure? How would you define what failure actually is?
So the problem what I see in 2023 with the majority of people, to include myself at one point, is that people care what other people think about them too much, more so than anything else. Meaning, I walked away from my career with the California Department of Corrections after 16 years at the rank of lieutenant, no less. My own dad, my own father was totally against that, tried to talk me out of it. Because his belief system, you know, being an old school Mexican, work for 20 years and collect a pension, he's probably thinking, no way my son's going to quit. And, you know, so that might appear to be a failing move, but of course not, man. It's like, it's all, let's say you were a lieutenant in the department and you get demoted, right? Something happens, you go into an investigation, you get caught up in a wreck, you get demoted to sergeant. Probably at one point that would have torn me apart or ate me up or embarrassed me, right? Because you're worried about the perception of other people. But when you take all that away, man, think about it. I walked away from a $150,000 job. Clearly money wasn't important to me. My 5-year-old daughter was, right? So to me, failing now is totally different what it meant before, because I don't care about other people's opinion in that aspect.
Yeah. I think this is how I like to define failure. I like to say failure is simply the act of giving up. So you can take action and miss the target, but that doesn't mean you failed, because at least you tried. As long as you learn from that miss and move on to the next target and take the information that you've learned in order to better the next action, but you didn't stop. To me, going back to the gun would be, if you shot at that target and you're in the middle of a training and you shot at the target and you missed and you said, well, I'm done, I'm quitting, I give up. That would be failing to me. Even if you missed every single target on that range or on that training, you still tried every single time, and you should learn from each one of those misses to get better. But I think failure is literally the act of stopping or just giving up. What do you think about that?
Well, with me, it even gets worse than that. When I first came back from the Iraq War with post-traumatic stress disorder, I mean, I still got it, but it's not as undiagnosed and as wild as it was. You talk about missing a target and quitting. Well, my mindset was missing the target, getting enraged, and then beating the target with a gun, holding it and shooting multiple holes in it. Now I've done more damage than I have good. So that's worse. To me, that is
how did you learn to take that and control it and do something different with that energy?
Oh man, I left a lot of heartbreak in my wake. You know, my parents, girlfriends, my current wife, just a lot of my sister, a lot of damaged relationships. You know, they say you hurt the people closest to you. So it was definitely a bottom. It was definitely a bottom, you know, and there was only one way after that, you know, and I often say I was either going to die or I was going to make it. So in 2010, I made the decision to try to ask for help, which is surrendering.
Man, and surrendering isn't necessarily a bad thing. So talk a little bit more about that, because I do go into that a little bit, but I like to hear other people's perspective on what that means to them when you say surrendering, but yet I had to surrender to win.
Facts.
How does that work? Tell me about that.
So your boy, being Mexican, machismo, it's in the blood or something, man. You know, put extra hot sauce so you don't look like, you know, and get some hair on your chest. Also, the military, you will never surrender. They brainwash you to not surrender, right? So, and being young, the human brain does not fully develop until the age of 26. So everything I was pumping in there was, I was so stubborn that I would have rather have died than to ask for help until I hit my bottom, my most absolute bottom. And that was on 10/31/10. I totaled my truck. And it wasn't the first truck or vehicle that I crashed. And it wasn't my first trip to jail. It's just, by that point, enough was enough. And my dad actually took me to the VA hospital in La Jolla. And I was so ashamed, so scared, you know, the frog in my throat. And I walked up to the emergency room to the counter, and I told the lady, the nurse, I need help. She's like, what's wrong with you? I said, I don't know. Every time I drink, something bad happens. I have these thoughts. I don't know what's wrong with me. And that's what my surrender looked like. And it, you know, it was a hell of a process up until this day.
Well, number one, it takes for me, I believe it takes a real man to admit those type of things, because we're taught, like you said, in the military, and maybe the machismo, and maybe it's in your blood, maybe whatever, but I believe we're taught to not have emotion, when in reality, if you keep holding that emotion in, it will eventually explode into anger, rage, frustration, bitterness, and a lot of negative, destructive emotions and habits. And so it takes a lot. So you can tell, obviously, you've come through a lot, because you're able to admit that and say, I left a lot of things in my wake. And that's why you said relationships are at the bottom, but your belief and faith is at the top. So what are you doing? Like, if somebody is in that situation where they're like, man, I do that. I leave a lot of emotional turmoil and relationship problems in my wake. How can they grow with that? And, how did you grow with that? What are you doing? And how can they take control of that in order to improve those relationships in their lives from the past and the future?
So let's talk about emotion, since I'm manly enough to openly talk about emotion these days. Yeah, it's another thing. Like I said, man, youth, me in my upbringing, nobody taught me about emotions. Something wasn't talked about in the household. It wasn't like, hey, you're feeling sad. Hey, now I talk with my daughter. Tell me how you are feeling. What does this feeling feel like to you? To be able to identify those emotions. But in Iraq, you have to understand, at the young, ripe age of 19, in a survival fight for your life every day for 13 months, you learn to channel every single emotion into rage in order to survive. There is no time to feel sad. There is no time to feel, happy, quote unquote. So the problem was, when I came home and consumed alcohol and drugs, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire.
Yeah.
Every little argument, and it goes deeper than that. It's the brain being rewired to, the neurons firing off in different directions to keep you alive, which I had to learn about that. I thought I was crazy. It's not crazy. It's all scientific.
Yeah.
But now,
because you're exactly right, man. So I'm a doctor, actually.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I'm a chiropractor. I own a medical clinic that does, we do what's called regenerative integrated medicine. We have multiple different providers working together in order to integrate their services and get better outcomes without using chronic medications and steroids and surgery and all that stuff. We try to help people improve the function of their body. So I totally get that. It is a rewiring of the brain. If you have a thought with enough emotion repeated enough times, it becomes who you are. It becomes your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is literally the program or your automatic habits that you fall into. So you fall into habits of, I'm not good enough, it's never gonna work, whatever. And a lot of times with people, when they use drugs or use alcohol or eat too much or whatever, there's a lot of different substances you can use. Some would be considered positive, some would be considered negative, but covering those emotions up is really what you're doing. Some people do it with, marathons. They're like, I'm just going to run. I'm just going to keep running. and if you do too much running, it can be destructive as well. How did you come to terms with all that, man, and say, you know what? I'm going to stop covering these things up. I'm going to step into these emotions and understand them.
All that transpired in the year 2010 when I landed at the VA hospital. First place I went was a psych ward, man. I'm going to be honest with you. They didn't tell me it was a psych ward. They said I can go upstairs if I wanted to. I said, well, yeah, I'm here to get help. It was voluntarily. And then right after that, followed by a 28-day inpatient substance abuse rehab. So simultaneously, I tackled, it was called SAMI, substance abuse and mental illness. So the first half of the day, I would be in rooms working on my alcoholism and addiction. And then the other half, they'll pull me out and work on post-traumatic stress disorder, identifying emotions, labeling, emotion labeling. And let me tell you, it was the most rawest thing I've ever had to encounter. And like you said, it was peeling away the layers of the onion and having to deal with everything that I did not deal with, and unable to utilize any type of substance to numb myself. So I had to feel it and go through it. That's what that looked like.
And what happened in that course, and what happened coming out of the other side of that?
In that course, I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot of therapy. I did a guilt research therapy where I was talking to clinicians. I did EMDR with rapid eye movement. And not I didn't like every single therapy or therapist. There was that one where you will have to record on a cassette tape and listen back to the most horrible stories that you live. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that, doctor. That's crazy. So like I said, I didn't really I gave it 100%, but it's like not pick and chose. It's just that, hey man, I tried it all.
Well, certain things, aligned with who you are more than others. Yeah, yeah. Because certain therapies that work really well for certain people don't really work well for other people. And you go, well, why not? Well, everybody's a little bit different, and for whatever reason, with your experiences and your past and your history, one worked better for you. But if you can try all of them and pay attention and take responsibility, then you go, oh man, this one's working really well for me, and that's awesome. So congratulations for going through that. And that was 13 years ago. So here we are, it's 2023 right now, almost 2024. And, what does the future look like for you? What do you, what projects are you working on? And what can you, tell other people about what you're doing into the future?
So I used to think, California Department of Corrections was, the plan was to do 28 years and retire at the age of 50, my retirement. Mm-hmm. Well, I ran into some corruption in my career in 2020, and I observed it at the highest levels of my department. I was a public information officer, so I had a right-hand seat to the warden. I got to see the corruption for myself, and it didn't align with my values, my ethics, my morals. So much so that I chose my family, my mental health, my health over a money value, over a title, over a power, over a position. At one point, I used to love those things, right? But now my mindset has shifted into what really matters. So, like I said, I believe everything happens for a reason. I do have my YouTube channel called That Prison Guard, and every day I show up and I put out a video and I end it with a positive message, and exactly stuff we just covered right now.
Well, and it's getting attention, obviously. I mean, that's why I was able to come across your stuff and loved the fact that there's a lot of things you went through, a lot of emotional things, a lot of hard-hitting things. You hit rock bottom, which I try to teach people, instead of allowing yourself to have the negative or the habits and the actions that are moving you towards rock bottom, why don't we just get you to where you feel like you're there now? And that way we can start identifying what those things are instead of letting yourself drift all the way until you don't have any other option. Because that's what a lot of people do, especially guys. They wait until their back is against the wall and now they have to do something. And trust me, I've been there. I've done that. Right. Yeah, and it's something I wish I would have been able to go, you know what, this is unacceptable now. Let's turn it around. So how can somebody identify and make that commitment to say, this is unacceptable now? I'm going to take this new route, new action, new attitude, whatever, to this new outcome that I'm going to be, that I'm going to enjoy more or make my life the way I want it to be.
Listen to your gut. Listen to your gut. Follow your heart. Follow your soul. Resentments. The word resentments, the act of resentment. I never even knew what that was. But holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. And a lot of people carry that. Could get into a road rage little incident, and their whole day, can you believe this, right? And they're not even focused on being positive and productive. They have just, held a resentment, and now their whole day is negative. So when their wife asks them, hey, honey, how was work? And they just snap when their mindset is still on that incident.
There's a book that I read one time that had a story about that, and I'm trying to remember the book's name. The guy that wrote it, his name was Michael. He's from Florida, but it's Untethered Soul. It's called The Untethered Soul. And he talks about that right there. He's saying untethering yourself from other people, other actions, and just becoming centered within yourself. And he talked about road rage. He goes, if let's say you're driving on the road and you're going, you like to go 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, like I do. I like to go 5, maybe 10 miles an hour over the speed limit personally. But let's say you're driving and you like to go 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, and you're on a 1-lane road and somebody pulls out in front of you and they like going the speed limit. All right. What emotions do most people feel when that occurs? Like, oh my gosh, get out of the way, you freaking lunatic. What's going on? And this was a question that was posed in the book, and I love this. It said, what gives you the right to believe that your way of driving is the right way of driving? Think about that, because that's what we all do. Secondly, let's say you're driving behind this person and you're like, oh, hurry up, speed up. And you're throwing a fit and you're complaining and you're talking to your spouse in the car or maybe other people in the car. And you're, complaining about this guy that's driving, 5 mile or driving the speed limit. And how much did that affect that other person?
Zero.
Zero. I mean, zero. It didn't change anything. The only thing it changed was you, your life, the people around you, and your emotions and mentality. So in your experience, how would you help someone detach from that and say, you know what? I'm not going to allow that to affect my entire day or my entire life. How would you do that?
I also like the saying, hurt people hurt people.
Ooh, yes.
So identifying like when you think people are being mean to you or attacking you or trying to, sabotage, which they might, but hey, I understand that, hey, there's something going on within them that is definitely not a reflection of me. So
yeah. Have you ever heard of Sanguru? Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Yeah, Sanguru talks about that. He's like, somebody comes over there and they start calling me names or saying something. He goes, I let them do their thing and I look at my watch and they say, are you done? Are you done? Because what he says basically is, if I react to their words, I become a slave to them. They have control over my emotions. And he says, secondly, they don't know anything about me, and all the things they're saying are coming from them and their soul and their feeling about themselves. Right. Is that basically what you're saying?
100%. You're never going to be able to change people's mindset as far as what they think of you. And I learned this when I was a public information officer for that horrible warden. It's like, since I was his right-hand man, they looked at me like I was part of that administration. I was, but I was not on board with everything that was happening. So I wasted a lot of my time and energy going around trying to explain myself that, hey, I'm not cool with what he's doing. Did it serve me any good? No, people still held on to their beliefs.
And what's funny is the only way you're going to change their beliefs is not by words. It's by actions.
True. And even then, though, some people are just,
yeah. But that's on them. But that's correct. On them, right? Again. All you can do is do your thing and know that your actions are in alignment with who you are.
One more important thing that made a difference was removing the negative people in my life. And you believe it or not, the higher you go up in this journey, the closer it gets to you, man. Family member. I had to block my mom from Instagram, man. I'm not bragging or boasting, but I had to do it, right? And I FaceTime my mother every day. But I had to do that.
Dude, that's so, that's ballsy. But it's true. It's so true. There's people listening to this podcast right now that if they thought about a friend of mine, his name's Brandon Dawson. He talks about drainers. He goes, man, you got to eliminate the drainers. Now, what if those drainers are your mom or your spouse or your, siblings or people right around you? Well, he's like, you don't have to eliminate them totally from your life, but you want to eliminate their influence on you. Is that basically what you did, right?
Facts. Energy vampires.
Energy vampires. Yeah, that's so true. Well, man, what? If you had any, lasting advice that you would tell somebody, just as a final thought here on this podcast, in information or advice, if you could boil it down to, let's just say one like nugget that you could give somebody that they could take with them, would there be something that you could say to them that would be lasting?
Life is going to happen. Life is gonna happen. I have 13 years of sobriety. I got into a fender bender in sobriety. My sister-in-law passed away of COVID in sobriety. My dog of 14 years just passed away a couple months ago. Things are gonna happen, right? It's how I react, how you react, respond. I should say this: it's responding over reacting. And
that's great, man. Respond over react. That is an extremely good insight. Just respond, overreact. What you're saying there basically is when something occurs, instead of reacting to the occurrence, take a moment, take a second, collect yourself, think about it, and then respond. That is a great, great insight. And I totally believe that that is something that that people should take away and really think about for a while. Well, man, Hector, I really appreciate you being on. Everybody, go to Instagram. It's Hector_Bravo, and or you can click the link. We have it here in the notes. You can also go to LinkedIn. Hector Bravo is on LinkedIn as well. But you can also watch on YouTube That Prison Guard. And I love the fact that you end those episodes with something positive, because it's so easy in our world to focus on the negative and really pay attention to the negative, instead of twisting that around and going, you know what can I focus on that's moving me in a positive direction, that gives me positive thoughts, because that changes everything. So also really take to heart, everybody listening to this, what Hector said. Respond, overreact. If you can get into the habit of responding instead of reacting, your life will totally change. Take that moment, which most people never take the opportunity to take that moment. Really get into the habit of doing that, and it will totally transform your life. Hector, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate you. Thanks for showing up, and thanks for doing everything. Everybody go to Instagram, check it out, like his page, follow his page, go to YouTube, like and follow That Prison Guard. Take that 2 million views, get it up to 3 million or more, right? Yes, sir. Thanks for being here. So everybody, this has been another episode of Fix Your BS, where we talk about belief systems in 5 major pillars: relationships, business, health, faith, finances. And today, the insight that I got was respond, overreact. And what an amazing statement. Take that, think about it for a while. If I were you, I would write that down on something. I would look up Hector Bravo, watch some of his stuff, and I would start to really think about how we can respond, overreact. Thanks for watching. This has been another episode with Hector Bravo and Fix Your BS. I'm Dr. Greg Firsley, also known as Dr. G, your host. I look forward to bringing you more insight and more strategies on how you can live your best life in the 5 major pillars and really develop the life on your terms. So thanks for watching. See you next time.